In section 2.1, we're going to be looking at what the different ways of organizing qualitative data is. And we're going to do it by several objectives. The first one is to organize our qualitative data in tables, how to construct bar graphs, how to construct pie charts, and when the data is collected from a survey, we have to organize it into some manageable form. Data that is not organized is referred to as raw data. And as I said, we're going to do it in tables, graphs, and numerical summaries in Chapter 3.
So, first, in qualitative data, how do we organize it in tables? The tables are called frequency tables. They're frequency distribution lists, which shows each category of data and the number of times that category occurs. So we're going to look at a bag of M&Ms and look at and you can see it's kind of a hodgepodge of colors. It's not very useful to us, so we're going to count them up. So here's our tally sheet. We have the 6 colors and a tally sheet, hash marks for each of the colors as we counted them, and then our frequency list is the actual number in each category. A relative frequency goes one step further. It takes the total number of M&Ms and you take the individual frequencies and divide it by that total number. So that's what we call a relative frequency. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So again, there's our tally and our frequency. We're going to add a relative frequency to that. You could leave it in fraction form, which is an exact form, or you can write it in a 4-place decimal. Decimals are always considered an approximate number, whereas the fraction is the exact number. The second way we can do this is in a bar graph. A bar graph is constructed by labeling each category on a graph. The categories go across the bottom in the horizontal axis, and the frequencies usually go up the vertical axis. And the height of the rectangle is the frequency. So here's our tally, just to remind you what our numbers were. And this is what the bar graph would look like. I want to point some things out. First of all, bar graphs have to have a title. The bars do not touch. You have to have spaces between the bars. This is going to be different from a histogram that we'll talk about in Chapter 3, which is for numerical data. But for qualitative data, we use a bar graph, and there are spaces between the bars. We can also do the same thing for a relative frequency, and you can see what that looks like. The only change is that the vertical axis lists the relative frequencies. A Pareto chart is an ordinary bar graph, but the bars are organized in size order, from the largest bar down to the lowest bar. And you can see what that looks like. But it's essentially the same data. We could also use a bar graph to compare 2 different sets of data. Here we're going to look at 2 different years of marital status, 1990 and 2006. And we'll draw bar graphs, side bar graphs. And you can easily compare the 2 different years by side bar graphs. Notice we still have spaces between each of the categories. Lastly, we're going to look at a pie chart. And the thing you have to remember about a pie chart is that all of the relative frequencies have to add up to 100%. If you do not add up to 100%, you have to have an additional category called other or miscellaneous or whatever you want to call it. But a pie chart or circle graph must add up to 100%. So We'll look at this for our marital status. And this is what our pie chart. Again, I want to remind you that it must add up to 100%. If it does not, you need to have an additional wedge that says other.